You've not only proven that it's possible to step onto the property ladder, but you've managed to do it 3 times at just 24. So what do you say to your generation who are focused on the glass half empty? And what was the pivotal moment that convinced you that defying the odds was not only possible, but necessary for your future?
Great question to start. Really loaded. Love it. First of all, I just want to acknowledge that people my age, if you were to read the papers, you were to listen to the news, there's a lot of doom and gloom. So if you did just listen to the news that's been portrayed, you would think it is next to impossible to get into property. I was a bit like that 3 or 4 years ago, and it's very easy, especially if your parents listen to the news and stuff like that. It's so easy to buy into that. And as you guys know, it's the negative news that sells papers and sells clicks. It's not the positive. When you ask that question, 2 kind of things come to mind. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not easy to get into property. For me, I work 2 jobs 7 days a week. I work 70 hours a week. I follow a budget. It's not glamorous stuff, but it's what you need to kind of do to put yourself in a position to be able to buy property these days. The second point is also you kind of just need to have an understanding of what is actually achievable. So for me, where I live, so I live just outside Melbourne. People from Sydney would be able to relate to this, but it's probably not achievable for your first property to buy at $1 million, at 800,000. You're just going to be priced out of the market. So for me, I looked interstate at investments interstate. So there are always different options and different avenues to get into property. Maybe it's a townhouse or a unit instead of a detached house. There are just different options. So don't think that just because you can't afford in your own backyard that you can't get into property.
Well, you've given us the headlines there, and we're going to unpack those in much more detail. But before we do, Harley, we want to know what were the conversations like for you as you were growing up? Because you do live just outside. You live in regional Victoria, in a wonderful part of the world. But tell us what it was like having conversation. Did you have conversations around the dinner table when you were younger and growing up?
Yeah, so that's right. I live about an hour north of Melbourne, so God's country up near Woodend. So it's a very footy and cricket kind of oriented town, small country town. We live and breathe sports. So grew up there. Mum and dad are very kind of blue collar workers. Mum's a hairdresser, dad's a firefighter. So we're the typical kind of Australian family. They met at the footy club. I've played footy. Dad's we've just lived through the footy club kind of thing. So very stock standard kind of family in terms of what the picturesque Australian family looks like. Growing up, I did have a think about it. There's not like a heap of conversations that we would have over the dinner table. Mum and dad were pretty good at never really saying where we're at financially. We definitely never missed out. We're very spoiled children, always got a trip in that. But it's only since I've kind of matured and started realising maybe they were hiding more behind closed doors at how expensive it is raising kids and going on these trips that you kind of take for granted as a kid. But yeah, thinking back to the real early days, I do remember the conversations around, I think they're called Dolomites or something that CBA used to do. And I used to feel like a little businessman getting my $10 a week in allowance and putting it into the Dolomites and seeing it on the paper. But that's about as early as we go. So no real conversations that stand out, but yeah.
So you started with a Dolomite account, and when did you pick up your first sort of job, part-time job, Harley?
So used to do like the paper runs and these kind of ones, the cash in hands. These are the prior, I think it's 14 and 7 months that you're legally allowed to be on the books.
Yeah.
So at 14 and 7 months, and one day I reckon I was hired at my local cafe. So I used to work there after school and on weekends and stuff like that. And then, yeah, throughout my early kind of childhood, 14 through to 18, I would have been juggling 2 or 3 jobs at a time always.
So there's some interest in money there, but it doesn't sound like it's necessarily coming from your parents. Is it a combination of money in business or money in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I've definitely, I can't really pinpoint a time when I was younger. I've always just been, me and my mates laugh about it. So we used to go one thing a year, we'd go to the Melbourne show and mum and dad would give us $50 to go spend on rides and show bags. And my mates laugh at it because I'd be the kid that would go with 50 and come back with $40 for savings. So I've always been kind of a saver and would rather put that money to better use and whether I'm saving up for a new share in footy or a bike or whatever it was, it was almost like early delayed gratification. I knew that if I wanted something better or bigger, that I can start working for it. And now delay a bit of gratification and get that eventually.
Can we talk about that delayed gratification? Talk to us about that for people who might be struggling with delayed gratification.
Yeah, sure. So when, like, with that example I gave before the show, when I was younger and stuff like that, there was obviously the footy cards I want to buy. There was always the lollies you want to get, kind of the quick fix. I guess it was kind of my parents to a degree. They always, I guess, instilled early on that if you do want something kind of more valuable, you're going to have to work for it and you're going to have to save. So, like, I had really good savings habits from a young age. And this has kind of progressed as I began to invest. A real turning point, if you're looking for one, it's kind of the typical, if you're Australian, you're interested in investing or property or getting ahead, the Barefoot Investor is kind of the first book that ends up on your lap. And I still remember reading it. I think Mum put it in my hands at about 15 years old. What a great buy that was for $25. So thank you, Mum, for that. But I still remember there was a little section in there, and it was Scott Pape talks about it was his letter to his second born, and it talks about the compound interest. And if you start young, you put $5,000 a year into a standard index fund. At 60 years old, you're going to have this amount of money. And I remember just reading that and going, God, so if I put $5,000 a year, I'm going to be a millionaire. And this was just like mind blown. So I used to run the little compound interest calculators off my wage that I'd earn $10,000 a year and work out, if I put $8,000 a year, geez, I'm going to have $4 million at this time. So I used to kind of run those numbers. And it eventually got in when I was 16. Shouldn't be telling everyone this, but signed Mum up to the ComSec account and started investing my money in index funds. So obviously you have to be 18 to buy. So signed her up and started putting my little weekly wage each week into index funds. And it's just kind of progressed from there.